There is always room in the collection of a board gamer for another game about Lovecraft, and there is always room for another game about zombies. These are eternal themes, always pleasant. Who would not want yet another game in those categories? In this video we talk about Dead Reckoning, which is a game that belongs to the latter group rather than the former. It has zombies rather than Lovecraftian mythos. It is a game that conveys its theme in a war game format. From the way it looks, you have an hexagonal grid, you have counters with or information organized more or less like you have in most war games. You have war game mechanics, etc, etc, etc. Actually posted a picture of the game in progress online and somebody commented, "Oh my gosh, it looks like Advanced Squad Leader with zombies." And yes, the overall look is that one, but the game is much simpler than Advanced Squad Leader, like almost every game is. It's actually very basic, it's very simple, introductory wargaming. It is a two-player game, not particularly friendly for the solitaire player because there is an element of secret selection of actions. I guess you could randomize that selection of action for one or two sides, and you will see the details in the main segment of my video. But still, the element of selecting an action and possibly bluffing, trying to read the opponent, as you do not know what action they have selected, this is an important element of the design, and so it makes the design really a two-player game at the core. Two players, one of them will play the humans, and the human player will try to evacuate several groups of refugees while also take control of key locations on the map, while the zombies are doing their thing, going around, moaning, and trying to eat people's brains. Which is a very strange thing, come to think of it. Why would zombies eat brains? We know the brains is something that the zombies need to stay alive. If you shoot a zombie in the head, the zombie dies. So zombies that like people's brains and eat them and then destroy that part, they're not propagating the zombie virus nearly as much as zombies that prefer to eat other parts of their victims and therefore generate more zombies. Natural selection should have already removed all of the zombies that eat brains and favor zombies that eat, I don't know, parts of the torso, parts of the arms, not the legs, because then the zombies that you produce can still go around and propagate the virus. Just natural selection doesn't seem to be working with the zombies. All of this is very important, although it has absolutely nothing to do with the game. I guess I shouldn't have had that second beer for lunch. It makes me chatty and unfocused. What were we talking about again? Dead Reckoning. Yes, Dead Reckoning. The game is played on the single-sided paper map. It's not particularly thick, but as you can see, it lays flat decently even if you do not own a piece of plexiglass, which is unlikely if you are a wargamer. Then you have your piece of plexiglass, put it on top of it, and you'll be fine. Single map, as we said, and also single scenario, but as you will see, there are a couple of ways in which the scenario will offer variety, especially due to the order in which the reinforcements will arrive for the zombie player. Turn after turn, the zombie player receives different reinforcements, but starting, for example, from turn 2, the zombie player can use this area to bring in reinforcements. This can be used on in turn 1, this is starting from turn 2, this area starting from turn 3, from turn 4, and from turn 5. But again, it means starting. That means that zombie player can bring in reinforcements from different directions, in different combinations, in different games, and that will create a variety of tactical situations on the board. The human player will set up mainly here. The refugees controlled by the human player start here. Around the board you will have other units representing police, National Guard, the army, so people that are trained and ready to fight, and they will help the refugee, they will protect the refugee as the refugees try to move from here to here, and they try to exit from this area of the board. Also, this is where the reinforcements will come, so as the refugees move this way, then there will be more army units, more other fighters, police and people like that will enter. And so actually, as the game progresses, you will have pretty much, I would say, a two-act drama. One in which the refugees try to exit the board, and later in the game most of the refugees will have either left or will be dead. And more and more military or paramilitary units will enter the board and will try to take control of key location on the map as their role switches from protecting the refugees to try to take control of the infrastructure. So at the end of the game, victory points will be based on the number and type of refugees that the human player was able to exit from the board, plus a lower number of points from the number and type of refugee units that are still on the map, at least are alive, plus points for the structures that the human player is controlling. So again, this simple scoring system creates different priorities in different parts of the game. Refugees first when it's possible for the human player to collect points that way, and infrastructure later as there aren't many more refugees, but there's still several turns to be played. So you play until the end of turn 6, and at that point you count victory points for the human player. The human player is the only one that positively collects victory points, although it is possible for the zombie player to cause penalties to the human player, and based on the number of points that the human player has at the end, you will determine who wins and by what level. It may be human defeat, minor human victory, major human victory, and so on and so forth. As for the units, here are the counters that you find in the game. The counter tray I added, it doesn't come with the game. And you have yellow units for the refugees, and you can see they have numbers printed on the back, and those numbers are hidden to all players, including the owning player, for the entire game. These units are shuffled face up, meaning that the number is face down, and they're placed again in that area there, and they'll be moved, and at the end of the game the numbers are revealed and the human player scores the full value on the back for units that exited the board, and half of the number for units that are still alive on the board. Then you have these are the units of different color. There's light blue and light green, again for trained organizations that will fight to protect the refugees, kill zombies, although that doesn't score points per se, but it gets you a tactical advantage, and for controlling the infrastructure. And then you have a bunch of zombies. Zombies are drawn randomly. You, as the zombie master, you don't get to have too much of a planning power. And also the reinforcements for the human player drawn randomly, but at least you can count on the refugees and the military units or paramilitary units that you control at the beginning. Now let's talk about the counters, because I have a couple of gripes, a couple of things to complain about. The quality of the counter is good, if not astounding. They are not super thick, but they are sturdy, colorful, serviceable. These are good counters. However, the problem comes from the fact that I don't find them to be particularly readable, due to the fact that the information on them is explained in letters. Those letters you see at the bottom basically indicate the attack power, the defense power, the movement rating. Then there's a number of fists for the human players representing the tenacity, and a number of skulls for the zombie groups representing how ugly and scary they are. Also, you have keywords such as horde, mob, company, platoon, etc., indicating the size of the units. What is the problem? The problem is that these letters refer to concepts, and what those concepts is explained on the zombie player aid and the human player aid. So, for example, my assault rating may be berserk, vicious, or dangerous. Then I need to go, when I see that I have an assault power of V, I have to go and check what that means, which tells me is better than dangerous, is worse than berserk. If this was your numerical factors 1, 2, and 3, if I have a power of 2, and I know the range is 3 to 2, 3 to 1, or 1 to 3, I know that I am, well, middle of the road. Defense rating can be iron, tough, or crusty. What it gets really tricky is the speed ratings, because now I have a W. And a W, looking at the counter, tells me absolutely nothing. Then I check and I know the W means walk, walk means to access. Frankly, this may add to the theme a little bit, but instead of a W, I had a darn number 2 printed here. I'd be fine. I wouldn't have that problem. Or you have, of course, human units that have a movement of V. You know what that is, right? You know how much it is, right? Well, if this was a number, you would know, but then I just checked vehicular, and I know that that means 6 axes. Maybe a minor gripe, after a couple of rounds you will know, but there are a couple of other things, the size. Most wargamers will know that a platoon is larger than a squad and smaller than a company, but is a platoon larger than a pack of zombies? Is it larger than a mob of zombies? Well, then we need the zombie player rate. And there are certain game effects that are based on who is the largest group in a confrontation. If these were rated 3-1 and 3-1, then I know immediately that my size 2 human group is larger than the enemy size 1 zombie group. One of those cases in which I don't know what happened here is they wanted to give this touch of chrome of theme, which doesn't really add much to the atmosphere, and it makes it a little more complicated than is necessary to double check things at the beginning to know exactly what the function of the pieces is. Well, maybe I'm overreacting, but it annoyed me a little bit. And again, there's just no reason that I can see for that to happen. Gameplay. Each game turn is divided in several game rounds that are directed based on the human and zombie initiative cards. Each player has one such deck. Each player shuffles their initiative deck at the beginning and then draws 3 cards that are set aside face down so the opponent doesn't see what was there that will not be used this game turn, and so each player will have a hand of 6 initiative cards that you do not show to the opponent, with numbers from 1 to 5. What happens now? At the beginning of the first round, within a player's turn, the players secretly select one of their initiative cards, put it face down, commit to it, and then reveal them. And they put the cards face up. And that number that is on the initiative card indicates the number of actions that the player will be able to perform this round. You take action tokens equal to that to mark how many actions you still have. So I take 3 because I'm the zombie player. My esteemed opponent takes 3. I'm the zombie player, take 5. And then the player that has the most starts performing actions in a sequence equal to the difference. So now I would take 2 actions as the player that has an initiative of 5. Then my opponent takes an action, and at that point we alternate. It's a nice system that allows you to spring some surprises on the opponent, to be surprised as you think the opponent is going to take a little bit of a rest, but they launch a major zombie blitz, that kind of stuff. Also, these counters that you use to keep track of how many actions you have, once you use it, then you put it on the map to indicate the unit that you spend the action on, because each unit usually can only act once per round. Plot twist, if both players use the same number, then this is a lull turn. You do not resolve the numbers that are there. You discard the 2 cards, and each player simply gets a single actions for that turn. So you have your 5 card action, of which you're very proud. You also need to pay attention to what the opponent is doing, so that you do not risk to play it at the same time as the opponent is playing their 5 card, because that of course means that both cards become completely useless. Also, there are day turns and game turns and night turns in which the humans or the zombies have an advantage. The humans have certain advantages during the day, and the zombies have certain advantages at night. What happens? What are the actions that you can take? As the human player, you can move out, which is a fancy word to say you move. You can use 5 combat, so you can attack an opponent at a distance based on the range, line of sight, and the usual things. National Guard, Special Ops, H-Court units, again the trained units may also conduct combat and move at half rating. The refugees cannot. A unit located in the hospital can remove damage. And then a couple of other actions here based on command. I'm not gonna go through them, just pause the video and read them if you're interested in knowing more about this. As for the zombies can swarm, which is they can move and then start close combat with an enemy unit. The humans can do that too, but they will try not to because they have the advantage of being able to attack at a range, so they probably want to use range combat as much as they can. Usually the humans will be defending in melee. Brains. You place a brain mark on any zombie unit, and that unit and the adjacent ones get to move together. Infected whale. You draw a random unit and you add that to the board. And as you can see, there are fewer actions for the zombies because, well, they don't have such a sophisticated chain of command as the humans do. Units will move on the board based on their movement rating, F, W, B, Z, I don't remember the letters, and the numbers that they correspond to, but then you have different terrain indicating, of course, costing different numbers of movement points. The map is interesting because the river here is impassable, so you have 3 bottlenecks here represented by the bridges, which are the only places in which units can cross. So interesting things for the zombies that may try to cut the bridge here. For the humans, the refugees that will try to rush through the bridges, the human that will place defenses on the bridges. Very interesting tactical situations emerge from this. Combat, I know you're curious about that, of course. Combat is simplicity itself, but it still feels very thematic and is as simple as each player has a combat deck, human combat and zombie combat. Simplicity itself. When a side is attacking the other, each side draws a card from their combat deck. Now, if both cards have the chaos indication on it, that means that there is a random effect that will be resolved, rolling dice on this table here, which is at the end of the rule book. This being done, you simply do what the card says. It's simple as that. As you can see, there are different boxes depending on various situations. If the humans are firing, then you look at this box for the humans and this box for the zombies. This symbol means 1 hit is scored, but then you have conditions. So, for example, if the humans are attacking in a range combat and this card is drawn, they inflict 1 hit on the opponent if the unit is using heavy weapons. And the zombies -1 get to annul a hit if the zombies are, or if they're trotting, if the speed is trot. For close combat, the same thing. If the zombies are attacking, then you look at this box, which indicates the number of hits that are inflicted on the opponent if the circumstances, the conditions next to the number of hits are applicable. So 2 hits if the unit is berserk, 1 if the unit is vicious. But again, and there may be also, since it's melee, the humans may also be able to inflict damage on the opponent as they're fighting. There are some effects that allow to reduce the damage that they take, other effects allow to inflict damage. For example, here in a melee in which the humans are defending, they inflict a point of damage to the opponent if it stay, another point if the defender is using heavy weapons. And then there are also boxes to resolve when the humans are attacking the zombies, but this will be rarely used. It's really simple. It's really flip 2 cards, compare the boxes that describe the situation, the type of attack that is being resolved. Some units may take hits, some may not. You will use these markers to indicate that a unit has taken a hit, so it was wounded or mangled, wounded for the humans and mangled for the zombies, but that's just a bit of crow because it's the same effect. Units may also have to be reduced after they took a wound or mangle, and again you reduce them to their lower side with different sets of completely impenetrable, incomprehensible letters. And that's the general idea. You continue like this, determining the number of actions based on the initiative that the two players commit. You spend actions to move, possibly fight, perform other things, especially related to the chain of command if you're the human player. Continue like this, turn after turn until the end of the game, and at the point the human player scores points based on refugees that are still alive, refugees that were evacuated, infrastructure that is under human control, count penalties based on special units that the zombie player destroyed, and at the point based on number of plays that the number of points that the human player has scored, you determine the winner of the game. No, I did not have a second beer for lunch. No, I'm not intoxicated. Could an intoxicated person do this? Huh? Probably not. Probably not. So, Dead Reckoning. Dead Reckoning is a good game. I really enjoyed Dead Reckoning. It's simple, linear. It's a tiny battle that is not just a descriptor, but it's also the name of the series in which the game is published, and it fits that bill. It is tiny, it is small, it is portable, and definitely it is a small independent production, which can be a plus, because it is in these independent productions that sometimes you can find games that have a stronger personality, that break from the pack of zombies, that break from the peloton, that can experiment in directions and give you a type of game experience which may be more niche, but again, precisely because of that, is different from a lot of other types of game experiences. And I think this is a game that takes advantage of that. This is a game that feels very different from a lot of other games. It has its own personality. Yes, war games, there are a lot of those out there, games about zombies, a lot of those out there. But here I really like the way in which you have this compact, tight experience, which is, again, it's a small map, but uses it to its advantage to make the experience claustrophobic, which really fits the theme. As the human, you're a little faster when you use your vehicular movement, you're faster than the zombies, but as your humans are walking, the refugees are walking, they're not that much faster. When they move on roads, they're a little faster than zombies. But then the zombies are really coming from all directions, so you're starting moving your refugees, you regroup them in an area towards the center of the board that seems safe, and before you know it, the zombies are coming out of the woodwork, are coming out of everywhere, getting on the map from different directions, and you really get that sense of being surrounded. You may enjoy the superiority of firearms, but as any good zombie movie teaches us, there are only so many bullets that you can shoot before the zombies catch up to you, and there's a gruesome, usually deadly melee that follows. Otherwise, if you had just a zombie movie where somebody's shooting to zombies from a roof for the entire movie, what would be the point? So here you have really a series of mechanics and a configuration on the map and a system of reinforcements that I feel that really fits the theme. You really have this sense of these zombies are just dead people that walk slowly one step after the other, and yet in the aggregate, the waves of zombies that are arriving from all directions do manage to present a clear and present threat to the human player. So there is definitely an element of tension there, which is enhanced by, well, the random elements. You have random events coming from the chaos table that are fun, and then you have a quasi random element in the secret selection of actions. Of course, it's not random at all because the two players are selecting their cards, although which cards you get exactly is random, but then the selection is voluntary. But then again, not knowing what the opponent has done, you can try to read the opponent, but to a degree it works almost as a random element. So because of all of these elements, then you can have twist of fate, so you can have the pace of the game that changes vastly from a lull turn to a turn which is like a major battle in which both the zombies and the humans are performing all sorts of actions. But in general, the elements of the design really come together well in a narrative form almost. Definitely the events that take place on the board are enjoyable also to experience, almost as again a narrative that involves these groups of survivors. Different from Hollywood film, and that's unusual, it's a two-act structure. One act is the the exodus of the refugees, and the other act is the advance of the military, the National Guard, as they try to take control of locations. And again, this is unusual. It's an unusual structure to see almost like two mini games stitched together in a single session of gameplay, but it works. And again, that's one of the advantages of a small production that lets you do that lets you go that way. So it's a game that has a lot of personality, that plays well, that is easy to play. I really like how there is a lot of thematic detail that has been hardwired into the combat cards. You flip the card, and not only do you have a resolution of the combat situation, but you also have a mini story, you have a mini event, you have a situation in which you see that the zombies are able to take advantage of darkness in the situation, that a group manages to break through the cover of the zombies thanks to their heavy weapons and stuff like that. So those cards do all the work for you, but simply by comparing the results that emerge from the cards, you will have a ludicrously appropriate result, while also a thematically vivid and thematically interesting scene that emerges from that. It's a fun game. It's a fun game that you can play in a single evening, does not overstay its welcome because of its two-act structure. Then also it features different objectives throughout the game, which again is something that keeps the interest high, that keeps you engaged and forces you to think in different ways throughout the game, which again makes the game interesting. You're not doing the same thing 6 times for 6 turns. You are dealing with different challenges in different phases of the game, which is fun. Overall, it's a very good game, definitely an enjoyable game. Small production takes advantages of the creative freedom that you have from small production. It fits our modern obsession with zombies, so that's again always fun. Again, always room for another zombie game in my collection. On top of that, also always room in my collection for introductory war games, because there are a lot of people that are curious about war games, are intimidated by some of the biggest games out there. And if you are a novice war gamer, or you want to introduce some new potential acolytes to the hobby, to the wargaming side of the hobby, well, this could be a good game. This could be an option to consider, because it is definitely a game that you can play with somebody that has never played a wargame before, and they will still be able to get the game. The learning curve is really trivial, is nothing to worry about, and yet the game is still engaging and fun. Dead Reckoning, highly recommended small war game, but you know, definitely a good experience, a compact experience. Good things do come in small packages from time to time, and Dead Reckoning is just an example of this old saying, an example that works, a game that really works.